Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and today we're going to be talking all about how to sim your character on Raidbots.com. Now, I get the question all the time on stream, on YouTube, basically anywhere anybody can reach me. How do I sim my character for single target? How do I sim my character for Mythic Plus, for AoE? What stat weights are best for me? How do I sim this trinket against this trinket? And basically every other question you can think of for sims. Now, that's okay because not everybody is as well versed in raid bots or simcraft as myself or others are in general. So, Raidbots has made this incredibly easy for even like the average, the new WoW player to do. Previously, until Raidbots was actually a thing, you had to use a program called Simcraft, which was a lot more in depth and honestly, sort of a nightmare to navigate and to run multiple sims at once. Raidbots has taken Simcraft and made it into a very easy, user friendly interface that basically allows you to run any sim you want with ease. So we're going to be talking about top tier sims, Droptemizer sims, BIS lists, stat weights, gear comparison sims, quick sims, and then getting into different profiles, talking about which ones I think are best for Mythic Plus, single target, two targets, how it changes stat weights, and how you can get the most out of your character. Now, before we get too far into that, any weak auras, profiles, or add-ons you see here, you can indeed get for free off my Twitch. If you want to swing by, hang out, ask any questions anytime, feel free to do so. So let's start off with the simplest of sims, a quick sim. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention before we get too far into the actual sims here is that you're going to want to have the simulation craft add-on in game. Now, I download all of my add-ons from WowUp. The actual add-on, once again, is called Simulation Craft, and what it essentially does, it allows you to go into game, type /simc, and hit enter. It brings up all of this information here that you just copy using Control-C, and then bring over to raidbots.com and paste it into whatever sim you want to do. What this does, it copies all of your information in game, all of your gear, your sockets, even your gear in bags. One tip here, when you actually open your Great Vault for the week as well, this will copy your Great Vault loot before you select an item, which makes it very, very easy to sim that in a top gear sim, which we'll get to in a little bit here. But you want to have the Simulation Craft add-on in game, downloaded and ready to use for raid bots. It makes things so incredibly simple and much, much easier than copying your character's armory profile over and over and over when trying to sim different pieces of gear. So starting off with quick sims, like we said, this is hands down going to be the easiest sim that you can run. Basically, all it's going to do is take whatever talents, gear, profile that you have in game. Say I'm playing Drain Soul AC here. I'm a Warlock, but you can use this for any class you actually want. Taking that data we just copied, going to Raidbots, hitting Quick Sim, and just pasting it in. Control V. It'll paste all the data in. You can see I'm playing the same gear here, the same talents, the same conduits, the same everything. We'll get to these options in a little bit here. But if all you're looking to do is just run a single target sim with the current gear you have in game, all you have to do is come in here, paste it in a Quick Sim, hit run Quick Sim, and it will take probably, depending if you actually have a premium profile on raidbots.com or not, a few seconds. There you go. The actual breakdown here, this is the current damage I will be doing with this profile. I sim for hire. Just get that out of the way. But this is the current damage you will supposedly, expectedly be doing on a patchwork 5-minute one boss target sim, 5091 DPS, playing these talents here. And it actually goes in depth. It shows you your breakdown of your main spells, being Rapture, Unstable Affliction, Drain Soul, Corruption, Agony, and this will change for whatever class you're playing. So one really great way to actually, I feel, improve as a player if you're trying, to learn a new class or whatever, is take the talent build you're playing in game, go to a dummy, hit it for a little while, following the rotation you feel is best, your single target rotation, and then run a quick sim. Look at the breakdown in the quick sim here, and look at the breakdown in your character's actual damage you dealt over the course of, I don't know, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending on how long you hit that dummy, and see what it looks like. Now, for the most part, this is a pretty similar, a pretty generic Affliction Warlock breakdown here. But if you scroll down even more, it goes even more in depth. It'll show you buff up times, redirected anima, which this is the Grove Invigoration ability from Nia we have in Shadowlands. Demonic Synergy, a legendary. My weapon enchant, Celestial Guidance. This is the Beaver trinket from Turn Scythe. My Gladiator's badge. So you can see it actually is indeed activating on use 1 minute PvP trinkets in general in the actual sim. Dark Soul Misery being a talent, Soul Rot being my Covenant ability, Bloodlust, Blood Fury, my ratio, I'm an Orc, Potion of Phantom Fire. So if you want a really simple generic, just, hey, how much damage am I currently doing at this point in time? A quick sim, throw your actual profile in is the way to go. Let's talk a bit more about a slightly more advanced sim. So one of the actual questions I get a lot on stream is, are you ever going to make a BIS list for the raid and dungeons combined? Or I guess at times it's also, how is the raid BIS list coming along? Do we have a dungeon BIS list coming along? And now, while I made one in my actual Warlock spreadsheet for launch, because there's a lot to do with world quests and things being taken into account, Raidbots made it incredibly easy to find your own BIS list for your own class, and that is through the actual Droptemizer option here. Very similar to how you ran the quick sim, what you do, you copy your actual information in Warcraft using the SimCraft add-on, paste it into here, and it gives you so many options. So my talents, trinkets, gearing, everything is right here. Basically all we use in game. And you can choose between Shadowlands. This will give you the option of world boss, basically world boss loot here at 207 eye level, because we're in 9.0, depending whenever you're watching this video. Castle Nathria, dungeons, PvP Season 1 honor, and conquest. So when it comes to Nathria, you can choose Raid Finder, normal, heroic, mythic, and it will sim every single option in the raid at that actual eye level. Now, trying to compile an actual sim like this in, let's say, a top gear sim, which we'll get to in a little bit here, or the actual SimCraft add-on, would be a nightmare. Raidbots makes this so incredibly simple through a basically they already have the entire list of add-ons that you need to actually run, or it's not add-ons, items that you need to actually run for this sim to be a thing. It saves so much time. So let's say, for example, I want to sim all of Mythic Castle Nathria gear comparatively to what gear I'm wearing. I'd come in here, I would choose Mythic. You go down here. Once again, we'll get to actual patchwork sims and things in a little while here. As of this current point in time, we're just going to keep it the way it is. You go down here, you just end up hitting Run Droptemizer, and it will take a little bit longer because you're simming multiple combinations of gear. But instead of having to go in and do, you know, I want to compare this item to this item to this item, this sim will indeed take every single piece of gear in the raid and combine it with your gear and give you the highest potential output, overall output damage-wise, of what you're looking to get. You can see here, I've got a fair bit of upgrades actually left from Mythic. I have Sire Denathrius being, okay, it's Sire Denathrius. His main hand weapon is going to be, what, a 200 or so DPS upgrade for me. Stone Legion chest, 1.3% upgrade. Sun King Salvation, a big upgrade on the weapon here. Boots from Shriekwing, ring, and actual, I guess this is an offhand from Lady and Nerva Darkvein. So you can look at this here by raw DPS, or you can go relative DPS, and this will give you the largest, highest overall percent expected value gain when it comes to killing that boss. Now, if you're in a guild that uses like RC Loot Council or Loot Council rules still, if there's an item is tradable, hey, it's not really yours until, you know, it's awarded to you. Running a sim like this before the raid is a great way to know, hey, this is an X upgrade for me. This is 0.8%. This is 3.8%. This is 0.4, 0.5. This will give you a very good idea of what you want heading into the raid, technically before the raid night even begins. Now, you can do that for the raid, like I said, normal, heroic, mythic, even LFR eye level. You can do it for dungeons as well. And this takes into account everything. This does normal, heroic, mythic, mythic 2, all the way to mythic 15, plus 7 weekly chest. You have your weekly Great Vault options here. You can choose whatever key level you're trying to push at. If you're trying to push for the highest end dungeon level loot, you're doing 15s for 210. You can sim every single item in every dungeon possible. Now, this is one of the reasons. Let's select plus 14 weekly chest here. Let's see what the biggest upgrade is out there for me. Now, this is one of the reasons as to why I've said in the past that it's really hard to make a BIS list looking at dungeons and the raid being combined, because, okay, are you doing heroic or are you doing mythic in the raid? Mythic drops 233 from the last two bosses. Heroic drops a bit lower, but still it's a higher eye level comparatively. And when you look at dungeons, are you trying to sim, let's say, dungeon drops like in mythic plus 15 at the end? Because that's just 210 eye level. Or are you trying to sim the weekly chest? And if you're trying to sim the weekly chest, there's not really a way to target one item or one dungeon like you can by just spamming that dungeon over and over and over. But technically, there are also some really big options or really big upgrades in Mythic Plus, depending on what you're going to pair it with. I can say here, I'm probably not going to see many trinket options as big upgrades here, but I'm running a cube. And let's be real here, the cube is a big trap. So these are all the options from the Great Vault that I have. Halls, Theater, Other Side, Plague Vault, Necrotic Wake, every single dungeon out there. The biggest upgrades I can currently get, the staff from Halls of Atonement, followed by the cloak, the ring. And this is like my biggest one here, basically. This or the Other Side at 2.4 and 2.6, 2.2 actually being tiered aside. So these are the items that I want to open in my Great Vault at the 226 item level the most every single week. Now, once again, there's not really a great way to target this, but it's still really cool seeing, hey, this could be my biggest overall percent DPS upgrade every single week. Once again, if you uncheck this box here, it'll show you the actual raw value, meaning the staff would be probably about 125 DPS increase, 126, 135 here. Let me go from there. Now, I'll mention here briefly, there aren't really any trinkets here that you see or upgrades for me. Imperial Ordnance, I'd play this over the cube. I'd play the Ruby from Theater of Pain over the cube. The cube is an insane trap when it comes to progression rating. You cannot guarantee the secondary stat effect on this trinket, the on use effect every 3 minutes. It has a chance of giving you crit haste or mastery on use, but it also has a chance of giving a healer mana or healing somebody or doing a couple other things depending on what's going on in the raid. And seeing as how it prioritizes giving a healer mana if they're low on mana over the actual secondary stat use effect here, this is a massive sim trap. But regardless, getting back to the sim, that's how you sim dungeons, that's how you sim the raid. And I mean, if you even want to, you can just go in here and sim straight up, hey, I want to look and see what dungeons I want to spam. Let's say dungeons Mythic 15, excluding the 16 extra item levels you get from that, and say, all right, cool, I have a weekend free. What do I want to spam? Theater of Pain, Necrotic Wake, Sanguine Depths, whatever, what have you. And once again, this will indeed give you the highest overall output of every single item. Now, I don't think I have a whole lot left here at 210 eye level. It will be an upgrade for me, but still, it's really, really cool to see. You can also choose to add sockets to this gear if you want. There's an option in the top left corner, right below where you select dungeons or raids or whatever you're looking at simming, and that will add a bit of value to these items. But I mean, getting an item to drop with a socket on it that you're targeting is going to be pretty tough unless you have one, laying around from Venari. Basically, Theater of Pain being my only upgrades left here. But this is the main reason as to why I don't think compiling a BIS list is really worth the time anymore, just because of how easy Raidbots makes finding your only available upgrades left at any item level in any setting in the game. Droptemizer sims are honestly a godsend and a huge plus to really get used to using Raidbots. So one thing that I really want to hit on as well is the simulation options in SimCraft itself. Now, these are going to be options that you can use basically across every sim: Top Gear, Droptemizer, Gear Compare, Quick Sims, whatever, what have you, even stat weight sims. It's in this little subsection right here. This is never going to be used unless you know what you're doing with custom APLs. And for this video, I assume you probably don't. Don't worry about it. Close this off. As far as simulation options go, so this is where things get a bit more in depth with Raidbots. Starting off with fight style here, you have a lot of them: Patchwork, Target Dummy, Execute Patchwork, Hectic Ag Cleave, Dungeon Slice, Light Movement, Heavy Movement. So the thing with these, like, I have a couple websites up here that actually show you what each one means. Patchwork is single target, no ads, no movement, nothing special, boss encounter. This is the one you use for single target sims, and basically, for the most part, whatever you're going to be doing. There are other sim profiles like Hectic Ad Cleave, single target boss, wave of 5 ads every 15 seconds, light movement, single target patchwork with light or heavy movement throughout, casting patchwork, except the boss target continually chain cast spells to model continual interrupts to incoming spell damage. So there are different profiles you can select here to sort of replicate different raid encounters. But the thing is, what would you consider a light movement fight versus a casting patchwork fight? And even if you sort of figured out what you're trying to do with it, it doesn't really translate over very well. Looking at a fight, let's say, for example, this tier, let's say Lady Enerva Darkvein, where it's single target most of the time, but sometimes you have an ad spawning on normal, or 2 on heroic, or 3 on mythic. But if you immune the ads, then they don't spawn. And sometimes you can stand there and blast the boss the whole time. Sometimes you have a mechanic you have to move out of the raid with and do. So it's really hard to replicate those kind of sims in Raidbots. And that applies to basically every boss. While we don't really encounter a whole lot of patchwork bosses in a sense, I mean, we do. It's just patchwork is going to be your best fight style that you want to run when it comes to Raidbots for basically every boss out there. There are a few bosses where I'll sim light movement, I'll sim heavy movement, maybe to see like where things are on, like maybe N'Zoth, for example, looking back to Mythic N'Zoth prog. But realistically, it's a very small percent of the time I actually do. 99% of the time, it's patchwork sims, and the number of bosses will change what I'm trying to do, as well as fight length. Now, I get a lot of questions about Dungeon Slice and what it means, and people link me sims saying, hey, my Dungeon Slice sim says this. and the link of sim is like 10K or something. I don't know the numbers at this point, but something pretty high. And I look at it, I'm like, how is this a sim? Oh, you ran Dungeon Slice. So Dungeon Slice is, let me turn this on because it's going to blind you guys. Dungeon Slice is essentially this. It tries to replicate a dungeon, whether it's Mythic Plus or Mythic Zeros, whatever, what have you. It sims a boss for over 2 minutes, less is used, 4 to 6 mobs, 1 to 3 mobs, 4 to 6 again, 1 to 3 for varying time frames, basically. It takes a bunch of different sims, puts them into one sim, and then gives you the highest result. Now, that might seem like a really awesome idea because, hey, yeah, that's sort of how Mythic Plus is, with one boss, with trash and all that. But here's the question. How many bosses? What dungeon? What level key? Tyrannical? Fortified? Bolstering? Explosive? What's the group comp? Are you lusting or not lusting? What are you doing? Are you food buff? Are you wiping? Are you 1 chesting, 2 chesting, 3 chesting? There's a million different variations that go into that, which just, in my opinion, in most everyone else's opinion, invalidate Dungeon Slice sims. Now, it's awesome that it's technically an option, and it's really cool to see different fight styles expanded upon here, but in the end, it's so hard to replicate a setting you're in, you know, a computer-based sim like this. So when it comes to fight styles, TLDR, Patchwork is what I use 99.9% of the time, and the number of bosses and fight length will change what I'm trying to do. So let's say I'm simming a boss. Let's say, for example, we're trying to sim Shriekwing, who has an intermission. Okay, well, that's unfortunate because it won't be pure Patchwork, but that will give you the best. This combination here, Patchwork, 1 boss, 5 minutes, will give you the best single target build of, or I guess sim of whatever you're trying to sim, 1 target boss wise. Let's say, for example, I get the question quite often, I want to sim a Mythic Plus trash pack. How do I do that? Well, there's not really a great answer to that because, once again, you can't sim Dungeon Slice because it's bosses in multiple trash packs for multiple durations, and light movement, I mean, are you moving or you're not moving? And that throws off different APLs and how they're structured for your class. So what I do, what other people do, which has been recommended on my stream, other streams, is we'll still sim Patchwork. We'll go 3 bosses, 4 bosses, 5 bosses. This is essentially 3, 4, 5 targets, however you want to call it, because bosses, targets, they're pretty much the same thing. Let's say, for example, I want to sim a 4 target pull in Mythic Plus. So I'll go 4 bosses, Patchwork. The fight length is important here. So a typical trash pack is not going to live for 5 minutes. I don't really think any of them are. Trash packs in Mythic Plus will vary depending on, you know, a 2, a 12, a 20, Tyrannical, Fortified, different affixes. Normally what I'll do, I will run, let's say, a 4 boss 20-second sim and see where I'm sitting. And then I'll run a 4 target Patchwork 40-second sim and see where I'm sitting. And the same goes for 20 seconds, 40 seconds, a minute. Now, once you have the actual result of that sim, this should give you a relatively decent analysis, give or take what you should be doing damage-wise on a trash pack for 45 seconds. Now, I will say 20,000 DPS is a little high here for me, but we're playing a pure single target build, and I mean, to be fair, with full CDs, with Lust, with food, with full pots and everything, this is quite possibly around what you're going to be doing. Cooldown should be dropping around the 40-second mark. So this gives you a decent idea of what you should be pulling within reason. And the breakdown here should be accurate for the most part comparatively to what you're doing. The thing is, trying to mix in light movement, heavy movement, whatever, what have you, you just don't know what you're reacting to when it comes to Mythic Plus. Sometimes you get a pack where all the mechanics go on somebody else. Sometimes you get a pack where you die in Mythic Plus. Sometimes you get a pack where you have to permanently move in Mythic Plus. Volcanic, Sanguine, Quaking. There's just too much to take into account. So knowing what your actual, just straight up generic, hey, this is my 4 target sim on Patchwork for 45 seconds, actual output is roughly, gives you a much better idea of what you actually want, I guess, to strive for in game when it comes to that. Now, like I said, it's important to run this sim if you're trying to sim for trash packs or just certain points in a boss fight where there's multiple targets present for more than just one 40-second sim. Run the 20, run the 40-second, run the 1 minute, run the 1 minute and a half option. You'll get different results, but you might see varying damage profiles, some things gaining value, some things losing value, and then you're able to make the best accurate just guess assumption as to what you want to be doing in that setting. So with that being said, talking about Patchwork, basic, general options there are a couple other things that are worth hitting on when it comes to these options down here. It's basically like weapon oils you have here. You have actual raid buffs. Now keep in mind, Raidbots is going to run these sims using whatever pot you tell. SimC default is going to be basically, I believe, whatever sims the highest for you in the predetermined profile Raidbots has. It's going to sim with food, with a flask, with a rune on, with potions being popped, with bloodlust, with the actual physical debuff, arcane int, chaos brand, every single buff that is here, which is going to be selected by default, it's going to sim with. So if your pure single target sim doesn't really match the quick sim it gives you, you can go down here and technically deselect some of these options. But I mean, as long as you know that and you're relatively close to it, and once again, your actual raw breakdown looks similar to what you've seen, in game, things are fine for the most part. So moving on from that, talking about profiles, knowing what we're looking at here, and basically saying that patchwork is what you want to run, let's talk a little bit about stat weights. So I get a lot of questions about stat weights on stream. Say, hey, I have 18.62873% haste and 92.62 versatility to the third power. What should I do? I have no literal idea. I have no idea. But you know who does? Raidbots. Raidbots, Simcraft, they know. So what the important thing about stat weights is that they're going to vary for everybody, right? I have a crit burst ring on with a haste mastery ring on, or crit haste and crit burst, I'm sorry. You might have mastery haste rings on for your character. So every single character is going to vary when it comes to just raw gearing and actual gems. I have a mastery gem in my helm here, mastery and haste enchants on my rings. So everyone's going to vary, which is why I say coming to Raidbots and running your own sims is very, very important and worth doing comparatively to saying, hey, what are my stat weights? It's also why I, when I put a guide out and say, I just say, I leave stat weights out, and people ask, why'd you leave stat weights out? Because I told you to go to Raidbots and run a sim, because I don't want to give you the wrong advice. It's not that I'm being lazy or don't know them. I could say haste and mastery are the best secondary stats for Affliction Warlock, but guess what? I'm an Affliction Warlock right now, simming at 5.8k DPS, and let's run a sim here. Early on, mastery was great for me by a large margin, but I've seen my stat weight sim that I ran about 10 minutes ago here, and guess what? If I recommend the haste and mastery, I'd be wrong, because I want mastery and then crit. And then haste is very close. It varies for everybody. And the more gearing you get, the more your stat weights are probably going to be changing. It's important to keep in mind that certain stats do DR at certain points. Like mastery, crit, haste, and burst will start gaining less raw value per point of that stat at certain thresholds. But they still might end up being your best option depending on what you're doing. Now we can see here for me, on my Warlock, the intellect is very strong. Like main stat is exceptionally strong in Shadowlands. I don't think it's ever actually been this strong, which when I say eye level is typically your best option, well, it's the truth. 1 point of intellect is essentially worth twice the amount of any secondary stat. Now mastery and crit are relatively close to each other here. Crit and haste are actually very close. So if someone comes to me and says, hey, I got a new ring with a socket on it, I don't know what to socket, I'm not going to recommend a stat weight sim. It might seem like a great idea to actually say, oh yeah, run a stat weight sim and see what it tells you. But let's say crit and haste were number 1 and number 2 for me. Let's say mastery's down here, right? They're very, very close to each other when it comes to pound for pound how much DPS they give you per point. Let's say, oh yeah, crit's here, right? So you run the sim, crit's there. Let's say you put a crit gem in that socket and you say, oh, my other gems are also haste, but crit's better. I'll swap everything to crit. If you run another stat weight sim, crit's not going to be your best stat anymore. It's probably going to be haste, because trying to compensate for actual gems and enchants in a stat weight sim will have that main number 1 stat lose value because you're gaining more of it and you're removing, let's say, the haste, for example. So haste will then become more valuable for you. Now, that is the main reason why I don't recommend stat weight sims when it comes to gems and enchants and all that. You can use this for probably just like simple, what kind of food do I want to eat in Raid or Mythic Plus, depending on what you're doing. But when it comes to like in-depth gem enchants, whatever, what have you, stat weight sims are not actually the best option. The best option that you have is a top gear sim. Top gear sims are going to be the sim you want to run to see your best combination of them. Scrolling past all the gear here, we'll come back to this in a little while and talk more about this. There's a lot to know here. But coming down, looking at this section here, the enhancement section. If you want to sim different gems and enchants versus each other, first of all, make sure this box is checked here. Replace existing gems and enchants. Scrolling down, this gives you the option of every gem in the game, every enchant, main hand, chest, bracers, rings to sim. So let's say, for example, my rings currently have 1 with haste, 1 with mastery. I have mastery gems in basically all of my gear. Let's say I want to sim haste gems, and I want to sim like double haste ring enchants, double mastery ring enchants, and let's say I want to sim Sinful Revelation against Celestial Guidance on my weapon here. Checking this box and checking these options will allow you to do that. Now, the big thing here, you can see down here towards the bottom, this actual little green bar. It shows iterations here. Selecting another gem, 125 to 305, 605. This is going to run every single possible combination you can of haste gems with this, with this, with this. It's going to sim Sinful Rev with one haste enchant, one haste gem, one mastery gem, and a different piece of gear. It's going to sim every single possible little combination you can in game and give you the highest overall output. Now, your max number of iterations you can run is 10 million. So you're probably not going to exceed that unless you're running a lot of sims. But I mean, the more things you add on, let's say you add in a second gem, a third gem, a fourth gem option, it's going to compound upon itself and become a lot of different iterations pretty quickly here. But looking at my actual combinations here, you're probably going to see that I can gain a little bit of DPS walking my gems around. And the big thing here, I can gain 16 DPS by going Sinful Revelation on my weapon over Celestial Guidance. Everything else is actually the same. Same gems, same enchants, but Sinful Revelation will gain me 16 DPS single target. If you scroll down a bit here, you'll see double mastery, double haste, haste mastery, different gem options here as well. It sims every single possible combination in the world that you've given it an option to do so and gives you the highest actual output. This takes secondary stats into account. This will give you the highest output, and then you go from there. Now, I'm playing Celestial Guidance over Sinful Rev because Sinful Rev is a single target, basically a debuff that you put on your main target. Celestial Guidance is an intellect proc, so there might be a little bit to gain here DPS-wise, but I'm not making the swap to Sinful Rev. But that is the reason why stat weight sims are a good tool, just to see, okay, this is my best secondary stat. But top gear sims are going to be what you want to run to see your highest overall secondary stat output and just overall highest DPS output in general for your character. Now, it's also important to mention that this is a 5-minute one boss target patchwork sim for this top gear sim. So it's giving you the highest output in one target scenarios. But you can also use top gear sims, looking at the actual simulation options that we talked about a few minutes ago, for 2 target, 3 target, 4 target sims. And in those settings, different enchants, different gems, different options, different talents potentially, which we'll get to in a minute here, very well might end up gaining more value than others. Looking back at my single target sim here over 5 minutes, it was basically mastery gems, haste and mastery. It had me swapping my enchant from Sinful Revelation, or sorry, from Celestial Guidance to Sinful Revelation. But looking at this sim here, it's going to tell me Celestial is better once the sim is actually done here, because Celestial is an AoE, it's an intellect proc, which affects AoE damage a lot more than others. You can see Celestial is indeed my best option here. It's telling me essentially that this is the maximum value that I get out of 4 target, 45-second patchwork sims. But this could vary from your single target sim to your AoE sim for your character, which is why it's very important to know what different simulation options do, and then be able to like run multiple sims and figure out what the best combination for you is as a whole. So moving on from that, it's not just talents or gems and enchants. You can sim talents with the top gear option. You can say, okay, what's better in 2 target? Let's say we're going 2 targets for 3 minutes. What's better in 2 target? Do I want Siphon Life? Do I want Absolute Corruption? What do I want here? Let's turn off the actual gems. You can scroll down. You can sim Siphon Life versus AC in a 2 target setting. You can sim whatever talent combination you want, and this will use the optimal rotation on 1 target, on 2 targets, however many you want, and give you the highest overall output. You can see that it does indeed tell me that actual SL is still better on 2 bosses for 3 minutes, and it will show you how much of a DPS loss roughly this talent is Absolute Corruption compared to your top option being Siphon Life. Now, there are so many options with top gear even outside of that. You can sim different conduits for your followers. The way to do this, unlock all soul mines. So let's say I am playing Nia for AF. You can go here and choose Dreamweaver. She has double potency, being 1, being 2, versus Nia having 1 until, I guess, 2 weeks from now. You can sim double conduits. Let's say I want to sim Nia and Dreamweaver. Nia is going to have Focus Malignancy. Let's say Dreamweaver, I want to have Malignancy and Cold Embrace. So let's see what this gives us here. We'll do 1 target, just SL, 5 minutes, patchwork. And this is going to sim both Nia and Dreamweaver. Nia having the highest overall option, which is going to be Malignancy. And it's going to give Dreamweaver Malignancy and Cold Embrace and give you the highest option there. You can do this also with gems, with gems, with enchants, with different talents taken into account. But keep in mind, you're limited to 10 million different iterations. And when you start adding all that on, that's where you start exceeding the 10 million iteration combination. Because it's not just simming these two soul binds, it's simming these two soul binds with different gems, different enchants, different this and that. You can see once again that Nia is 28 DPS higher than Dreamweaver with Malignancy and Cold Embrace, essentially double potency by about 28 DPS. So top gear sims really are like the end all be all pinnacle for the most part of raid bots. You have so many options here, so many different customizations. You can even add in different legendaries. Let's say you want to sim a 235 haste versus pair of demonic synergy shoulders versus whatever else you're wearing. You can do that. Now you'll get this like red option here. You have to select the different option for your legendary. Yep, you can't work two. That's basically what it's telling you there. But you have so many different options of what you can do. Let's say, for example, I want to sim, remove this. I want to sim my 213 socketed bracers versus my 210 ones. And I don't have intellect on here. We can just scroll down. Intellect's on, bam, there you go. Just toss it right on. You can sim that there. Let's say I want to sim my Unbound Changeling and my cube versus the actual badge or Dark Moon deck. You can select all these options here, run the sim, and you'll see that it will give you the highest possible combination, talent or damage-wise, of all these different pieces of gear, different effects, whatever, what have you. Now, I will say trinket sims are incredibly messed up for Warlocks, and probably most classes, I think, at this point. Messed up, or just hard to read because the cube is not very good in a lot of settings. Some things are undervalued, some things are overvalued, but you can see here once again different trinket combinations. You have Dark Moon deck Putrescence, you have cube, you have different conduits from Nia versus Dreamweaver, you have different bracers, you have so many different options. Top gear sims are where you want to be. Stat weight sims, quick sims, gear compare, they're all good to supplement top gear sims, but there's a reason the trophy's here. Top gear gives you so many options comparatively to everything else. Pretty much anything that you want to know about your character or want to sim, you can pretty much do in a top gear sim, which is why they're recommended over basically every other iteration at this point. So the last thing I want to talk about here briefly are gear compare sims. These are essentially shorter Droptemizer sims in a sense that you can run on the fly. So I have my actual character profile pasted in here. Let's say this Entwined Gorge or Tendril dropped in a dungeon earlier. So, or drop right now. So we go right here. You can go down to the actual item name and type in Entwined, and it should come up. There you go. You can choose what eye level. Let's say it's 210. It dropped my Mythic plus 15 at the end. You can choose, let's say, a Mastery Gem, a larger Mastery Gem. This will give you options for other enchants, like previous expansion enchants and gems and lower ones. So make sure you're selecting the highest one for the current expansion. 16 Mastery, and go from there. Now, you might see here the slot is finger 1, which means it's simming it directly against this Ardent Sunstar Signet. If you want to sim it in both spots here, just hit Duplicate Gear Set, go to finger 2, and now you're simming this iteration against this, and this one against this. So we hit Compare Items, one boss patchwork, it's fine. That's sort of irrelevant at this point. It will sim it against that ring in the first slot and that ring in the second slot and give you the actual output. You can see here over slot 2, meaning this ring, it is a 26 DPS gain over this heroic ring that I have. But if you're simming it against this ring here, it's going to be a 3 DPS loss. And once again, there's a lot of mastery on this with the enchants and the gems. But, well, you know, it varies. Eye level is big. So, Droptemizer sims are really good looking at like a raid as a whole, or like a dungeon as a whole, or multiple dungeons as a whole. But if you're looking for a quick on-the-fly sim with maybe an enchant or a ring, or a gem on your ring, or whatever item drops, gear comparison sims are where you want to be. To a similar extent, let's say I wanted to sim the Hymnal Trinket from actual Sire Denathrius. So if we go down here, we can actually sim both the rings here, and we can sim a whole different item by hitting Add Gear Set. This will give you a different gear set separate from these two that you can say put in the actual trinket. So we'll put it in. There it is. Bam. Let's say we want to 233 eye level. 233. We can do trinket 1, sim it against my actual Unbound Changeling. We can duplicate it, sim it against my actual cube, and go from there. If you want to add 2 pieces of gear per sim, say you want to add like this actual trinket with this ring, you can add an item to this as well. So you can add the Entwined Gorger Signet to the actual sim. So this will sim basically this ring at 210 with mastery on both options here, comparatively to this right here with just the trinket being a thing. You can duplicate this as well and change it to trinket 2, finger 2, whatever. So you have a lot of options you can expand upon in these actual gear comparison sims. But if you're looking to add, say, a gem to a ring that dropped in the raid, and your raid lead's asking, hey, how much of a raw DPS upgrade is this ring or this trinket comparatively to what you have, coming in and running a gear comparison sim is where you're going to want to be. It'll take probably 30-ish seconds to set it up. But once you have it down, the output's right there. Bam. Comparatively to what we had to do, I guess, 2 expansions ago on Simcraft, it took forever. And you can see here, once again, the trinket, the ring are a big gain over slot 2 comparatively to slot 1. So gear comparison sims are also really good to know on the fly. They're a lot more helpful than they seem, and being able to give an exact analysis of what DPS, like raw DPS wise, this is upgrade wise for you is very, very important and good to know as a whole. Hey, let's be real here. I'm always perusing the auction house or BOEs, and I've lost a fair bit of gold to gear comparison sims at this point. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this video gave you all a better understanding of really just raidbots.com, the ins and outs of it, and just basically how to operate it at this point. Hopefully it put some of these stat weight, top gear, what should I run, what trinkets are good, what aren't. Even the trinket sims are a bit off at this point still. Questions to rest, and hopefully it helps you out. Let me know what you guys think of this video in general in the comment section below. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them there, and I'll be sure to get back to you. If you guys want to see more WoW content and help support the channel, be sure to smash the subscribe button below and hit the like button while you're down there as well. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all again soon. Peace.